In this video I'm gonna turn this highly figured piece of walnut wood into a beautiful side table. It will be on sale, but more on that later. This piece of wood was very cupped and bowed, so eventually I had to plane it down. But before that I decided to make a base which was heavily inspired by the spider leg base from 4 Eyes Furniture. For the base I used some pieces of oak which had to be resized first. This took a little while, so let's cue the music and let's go with it. To resize these pieces of oak, I split the cuts into 2 parts. One of the parts were cut halfway through the piece of oak and the other one would finish it, so I had a better surface finish and less sanding. Now that all the parts are resized and ready to be made into a table base, I can start working on the tabletop by planing it down to a flat surface. Especially for this project I built a plane and I sharpened it, but it still took almost longer than the rest of the project. I didn't even fully level it because I didn't want to lose the beautiful grain which were only a couple of millimeters left after planing it. When I continued to making the base, I started with cutting a bevel on the top and bottom side of each leg, so it would match each other and sit level. Before I tapered the legs, I decided to cut the groove for the tongue and groove joints which will eventually connect the legs with some stretches. Because I have never cut grooves on the table saw before, I took my time so I can get the cleanest grooves possible. And the pro of that is that you guys get a little montage of me cutting the grooves. To cut the right tapers on each of the legs, I made a small template which I can reuse in other projects. It's reusable because I double-sided taped each of the parts to it and it could be removed and reattached at different times. To connect the legs to the table base I made 2 stretches. Each of the stretches has 2 legs to it and a half lap joint in the middle where it attaches to the second stretcher. To strengthen the connection between the legs and the stretchers I made some tongue and groove joints. The tongue is in the stretcher and the groove I have already cut. The depth gauge on my miter saw slips, so I cut all of these tongue and groove joints on my table saw, which was a lot easier. At this point in the project I spent almost 5 hours planing and I just planed the top flat and half of the bottom side. So there's just quite a while to plane, but before that I'm gonna round over some edges for the table base and assemble it. To add a bit more interest to the table base I added a pine dowel to the tongue and groove joints which will match the top of the table when it's all finished. Assembling each side of the legs took a little while because I had no place to put my clamps and I only had the dowel as way of clamping. The dowel would clamp because the holes are drilled offset to each other and it would pull tight with as little gap as possible. After this assembly I had 2 separate base parts which all needed rounding over, so please enjoy some music and me rounding over the edges. Now that the top and bottom of the table are fully planed, I can add some threaded inserts to mount the table legs to the table. I decided that it was the easiest if I transferred the holes from the table legs to the tabletop. After I transferred the holes from the table base to the tabletop, I could use my drill guide to drill straight holes for the threaded inserts. I countersank the holes so the threaded inserts wouldn't sit proud of the bottom of the table. After countersinking the holes, I was ready to install the threaded inserts and mount the table legs to the base. To not bore you guys with the sanding process, I cut straight to the finish process, which I did with some Rubio Monocoat. I have never applied Rubio Monocoat, so I just put 2 parts normal finish and 1 part hardener together to make it harden quicker. And then applied it with some Scotch-Brite and wiped it down with some cotton. Because I've never applied Rubio Monocoat before, it took a bit longer, but I am quite happy with the finish. The only thing I would change in future is I would drill the threaded inserts after finishing instead of before finishing. Now that the end is inside and you are still here, this table is for sale. There is a link in the description. If you have any interest, please visit that link. You can pick it up in the Netherlands, or we could find another way to get a table to you. Now that the finish is applied and dried, I can assemble everything and make some beauty shots for you guys. Please subscribe and like this video if you enjoyed it, and I will see you soon.